I think that somebody has figured out that I have a trip. He's Toothless thinks the angle was a little off and decided to move the tripod. But he's been a little clingy. It could have to do with the fact that I have been really sick. It's why I disappeared. I was so ill that I couldn't even post. I couldn't do anything. The last few days, 3, I've been more normal, but I get tired really quickly. So we think we had the noro. Lorna got it on the way to Indiana, and by the time she got back, now it's interesting, number 4 daughter didn't get it, but Lorna's boyfriend got it, and he was sick for a week, and at the tail end of that, Kevin got it, and he had it for 2 days before I got it, and now my mom is pretty much over it, but she's worn out too. I was getting concerned because if mom didn't get better, I couldn't go. And, you know, I've been looking forward for this for 2 years. We didn't do this last year. So I'm going to Minnesota. It's our annual summer writing retreat. About 9 of us, I think, are going to be there. And so I've been making journals. And I had started this before I got sick. I've had most of the signatures and text blocks sewn. So that's like the book part of the journal. And then you've got to create the covers and everything. Well, I had most of the insides done. There were a couple that I was laying on the couch. I couldn't really sit up much. I got too dizzy. So I would be laying on the couch trying to sew these things with these big long threads. Took forever. It was ridiculous. And then I couldn't find the fabric. When I cleaned out my room, I put it all in the back room, but it has disappeared and we can't find it. So I dug through, I found a few things, but it would be like, I would get up, I would go into the back room. I would look in one place to see if someone had moved stuff or whatever, you know, because I had taken boxes out there to be sorted, but those boxes weren't there. I don't know where they went. And then I discovered that Lorna had been cleaning up back there for me. How thank you. Very nice of her. But she doesn't remember seeing them. And they were all in a bag, and they were in a Michael's bag. I bought them 2 years ago in October. So it'll be almost 2 years this October. But I bought them at a Michael's in Kingsport, Tennessee, and they were going to be perfect, right? They're gone. So I found a few pieces, and then when I was feeling a little better one day, I had to go to Walmart for my mom. She needed a couple of things. So I went to Walmart for her, and while I was there, I got a few more fat quarters. Are they the best, most amazing pieces? No. No, they're not. They're pretty ho-hum. But at least there's something, and I'll have a short video in the next. It won't be a short, but it'll be a short video in the next week or so, probably with clips from the retreat and stuff. Neville, what are you doing? And so that'll be in there. But it was such an inefficient way to do things. I would get up, and you know, one of the things you have to do is you have to take the mow. Which is kind of, usually you would use a buckram for it. I was using some Osnaburg, and, you know, I would glue the edge of the spines and then put that on it. And then I would go lay down, and I would do 3 of those. I have to do 9 of these journals, right? And then, you know, I do this again. When I use the corner chomper to chomp my boards, I think I could do maybe 5, you know. There's 2 on each one that you do, right? I had to do 5, and then I would just have to lay there. It was so ridiculous how many times I had to break in between doing anything, but they are done. They are drying. I did the, you know, put the text block into the covers. The last 5 of them I did at about, oh, maybe 6:30 or something. So they are, well, it's probably closer to 7:30. But so they're still drying. They're probably dry. This is the desert. Everything dries fast. But I want them to be there as long as possible before I wrap them. And I should be recording wrapping them because that's always a fun thing to do. And I can use it for something I just want to yap about. But yeah, and it's one of those things where if I didn't bring them, nobody would blink. You know, for all I know, they're sitting on people's shelves going, what am I going to do with these things? But I love making them so much that I want to bring them. And I know there is one gal who really does love hers, Lena. You know, every time I get a really nice message from her, how much she's enjoying using it. And so, I mean, you know, come on. I want to do it. And if it's not something someone enjoys, oh well, they don't have to use it. They can give it away. They can, you know, use it to, like, for note, you know, tear out pages and write notes on it. I don't care. I just want to do something, and I enjoy doing this. And this time it was funny because it seems like it was this big process, and it was a burden. I mean, when you hear me talk about it, but seriously, it was the thing that kept me from going insane because I couldn't read much. Because I really just couldn't sit there and hold the book up, and I couldn't sit upright, so I'd be laying there trying to hold the book up. I couldn't, screens weren't friends of mine. I would let things play, so I listened to a lot of audio. Most of this is audio, but, you know, just not much. So I have to get done here. I have to record this. I have to I haven't even done my June journal set up for my planner. I need to do that so that I can get my packing list so that I make sure I don't forget anything. That would be really nice. And then I have to go in the house and start folding clothes so that I can pack. So I've got a lot to do. And so I think I need to quit yapping about this and kind of get back to work. I'm wondering, I think I might be missing a book here. I think I'm missing a book. So Cherringham, I did do Cherringham, and I don't think it's on here, so I'm gonna talk about it, and we'll go from there. But one more drink, and then let's chat. Okay, so the first book that I finished was D.E. Stevenson's Music in the Hills. This follows Victoria Cottage. It is the Deering family, and so Caroline and Victoria. I want to say Victoria. It's so hard for me not to say Victoria. But Caroline Deering in Victoria Cottage is like, I want to be her when I grow up. I was really just impressed by her. And in a lot of ways, she reminds me of my dear friend Anne. There are things about her that remind me of Anne. And I loved that, you know, just while I was reading it. It's so funny because they're very different people. And yet there are just things that work well together. So I thought it was kind of strange. But anyway, this is about Caroline's son who goes to live with Caroline's sister and her husband in Scotland to learn how to become a farmer. At the end of that other book, he had tried to convince his girlfriend to marry him, and she had plans for her own life, and she was like, no, not interested. And so, you know, it's one of those things where he gets there and he's going to be a farmer, and he's going to live alone and be single and despair, you know, just all despairing and all the things, right? And his aunt, Caroline's sister, you can tell. Now, we've met the other sister as well. She's not the same, and yet in little ways she is too. It's kind of funny how very different and very alike she is as well. But these are pretty practical, wise women that you can just learn a lot from without feeling like you're getting a moralistic tale, which was really cool. So in here, she's very, is her name Emma? I can't even remember her name. She is not Amy. She is not Emma. She is Mamie. So Mamie is a farmer's wife. They like have the big farm, and then they have people who work under them. And you know, James has come in, and he's going to take over and learn the business and all the things. And Mamie is just they never had children, and she loves people. She loves children. She's very wise, but she's also very kind of withdrawn, if you will, until she can't be until it's not the right thing to be. And it's really just the story of her kind of getting to mother this young man and the community in as a whole, but also to kind of show that you don't have to have children to understand children. There are a couple of small children in here who are actually rather afraid of her and her husband, and yet she manages to engage with them and finally kind of wins them over by just being reasonable with them, which was really cool. But and then you get James, and you get to see him mature a little bit. For a little bit there, I thought that this could go in an unexpected direction, and I was like, I don't know about that. But no, it didn't work that way, and that was good. So all in all, it was a lovely story. I want to keep obviously reading. So many of her books have like interconnections and things. It's one of the things that I love most about her books, is that all of a sudden you'll find someone that you met in another book, and you're like, oh, hi, it's good to see you again. And yeah, I just a very, I want to say wholesome, but I think that, and there's nothing wrong with wholesome. I love wholesome. But I feel like saying that kind of undervalues the seriousness of the fact that James is about to make some really foolish mistakes. And yet he does, and yet the fact that he has such good mentorship, and that Mamie can see what's coming and can help steer him away from it without manipulating him. She doesn't manipulate him, and yet she lets him stand on his own 2 feet, but she shows him why he needs to be who he needs to be, and as does her husband. Is his name Jock? I don't know. It's pretty cool. And all in all, just lovely book, and I could probably talk about it forever, and I'm not going to, because that would be very, very silly. I'm going to talk about Sheringham before I forget, because I am afraid I will forget. And I really don't want to take forever, because I only have this window open and it's already getting warm. But, you got to do what you got to do. So Sheringham, it was Carnival of Lies. And in this one, Sheringham is celebrating its 500th anniversary as a chartered market town. King Henry VIII had given them a charter to be a market town, so they have this big celebration coming. And just before this celebration, just days before, the town charter, which very few apparently in England still actually have a physical copy of theirs, because floods and fires and just mislaid and thefts and everything, so there aren't that many around, but they still have theirs. They have this like pop-up museum that has popped up in this old building, and that had been donated to the town. And so, they've got these guards that are guarding it, all the time, because they've taken this charter out of safe storage to be shown during this time, and then it'll go back, right? Well, they get broken in, it gets stolen, and the guard sleeps right through all of it. And everybody's like, what's going on? And of course, everybody thinks that he was just drunk, and, stuff isn't adding up, obviously. But, Jack and Sarah, who are like the sleuths through this whole thing, they are called in. Police find this. The town is upset. And there's lots of stuff going on. So we have that happening. At the same night, a liquor store was broken into, which happened at the same time, just a couple of months after the guy who broke into that liquor store the last time just happens to get out of jail, and now he's broken in again. Also, there are these protesters protesting no history. That history's evil. We don't want history. Stop acknowledging history, kind of thing. It's really weird. Graffiti and all kinds of protests, and someone's videotaping all the time. Phones, obviously not actual tapes, but just doing all the things. And they're trying to figure out just what's going on. And it was a really good one. I did figure out why. It's really strange. This happened several times recently, and maybe it was because I was sick. So I figured out who is responsible, but I didn't understand why. You know, I mean, you have this vague general, but it didn't fit until some pieces finally came together. But it was another good one. They're very short. If you like mysteries, they almost don't have any language. Some of them have none. Some might have one or two words, not usually any. But they are read by Neil Dudgeon, who plays John Barnaby in the Midsummer Murder, so the nephew of the first guy. He's the narrator, and it's really funny because in a lot of ways he's not a good narrator when it comes to women. He just gives it really high, so squeaky, scratchy. It's really annoying, and yet somehow it works because it's him. I don't really understand. He does a pretty decent job at playing Jack, who is a retired New York police detective from Brooklyn, you know, and he gets him pretty well once in a while. And some of it isn't his fault. Some of it is the author's fault, because sometimes the authors get the Americanisms wrong. But for the most part, he gets Jack right with a reasonable New York accent, not over the top, but it's not that, you know how you get the flat American that the British does sometimes, and it's almost as much of a caricature of American that is so far off that it's ridiculous. Kind of like how Americans will like overdo the "oh, I don't know" over poshness thing that never works. It's really bad. Yeah, he doesn't do that, and that makes it really nice to listen to. But I don't know, he has this way of like going into a falsetto that shouldn't work. It's not good, and yet somehow it works anyway. I don't know. Really enjoyed it. I think I would give it 5 stars. I can't remember anything about it that I went, wait, what? But again, I was sick, so I could be completely off. Okay, then I think it was Booked for Murder. Yeah. Booked for Murder by P.J. Nelson. Yeah, I always wanted to do P.N. P.J. Nelson. I talked about it last time. I did finish it. It was the Juniper Bookstore. The Juniper Bookstore Mysteries #1. Okay, it was a good mystery. It was, there were a lot of really good things in the mystery. Stuff I figured out, stuff I didn't figure out, all the things. But it got too much. I almost didn't finish it. The language got too much. I gave it 3 stars because it was a great mystery. But the language got too much, and it wasn't like, just the foulest of the foul all the time. It was just that it was regularly sprinkled instead of just this occasional, reminding me that some people do this. And a significant portion, I would say that more of the words than not were irreverent uses of God's name. And I got to the point where I almost didn't care about the mystery because I was waiting for the next one to drop, and that's never a good sign. So I decided I wasn't going to listen anymore. Also, additionally, at the end, it wouldn't have been a problem for me normally. At the end, there is an illusion that one woman had been in love with another woman, and that it kind of, at first you get this feel that, maybe there was this subtle relationship that they thought they were hiding, and then later you kind of get the attitude, well, it was more one person's imaginings. But it was pretty much, there was a reason for it, and it wasn't expanded on, and it wasn't pushed on and everything. And by the end of it, I was just like, there was a problem with that, mostly because of how other people reacted with it. And then our main character went from unreasonably and yet not done with someone to almost instant forgiveness. All is well. What was the problem? It was way too much of a wild swing, and she tended to be that way anyway. Our main character, I don't remember her name, but our main character was pretty she would come up with a wild-haired idea, and that was the thing. And then she would come up with another one, and that was the thing. And it was kind of her personality, and so it worked until it just didn't anymore. So I wouldn't recommend it. I'm not going to read anymore. And it's sad because I enjoyed her as a character, even as she annoyed me. But I just, no more. Unless someone can tell me that they've read them and the whole language thing and whatnot got, cut in half subsequently. It was just, a one-off, whatever. Then maybe, but probably not. I don't know. Anyway, then I listened to The Silent Menace by Angela Carlisle. This was a wild ride. This was, if it could go wrong, bless her, it did. So we have a woman, don't remember her name, not going to try. She has a deaf daughter. She has been in the previous books. And maybe her name is Allie. No, Allie was the one in the second book. Anyway, so this gal is, she's an accountant, and she notices something is off in the books. And as she comes outside from work one day, all of her tires are slashed and something is off. And so she goes and she tells the security, the police come, and the one police guy is her cousin. So she's, very comfortable with him. And then it just spirals and spirals. Somebody is after her. They know it. They think they know who it is. And then they know it's not that person. They think they know. And it's like every time that something can happen, it does. And it was really good. I have loved this series. I'm sad to see the series end. I am. But anyway, it was a great ending. And it was interesting because, being romantic suspense, I was concerned that the romance was going to be a little too fast, too heavy to insert all the things. But the romance in it, they're both going, this isn't the time, we've just got to figure out, but they are growing closer. It's understandable that they would. This guy is in the story, who was the security guard. He has been a bodyguard, and he knows how to do these things. And so there are issues there, and they work together, and the end comes out a little perfectly tied, maybe, but understandable and bearable. It wasn't over the top. It wasn't too much. Sometimes I get a little annoyed, and this one didn't annoy me at all. So that was a blessing. Next up was Murder on the Rocks by T. Kinsey, the latest Lady Hardcastle mystery. This time they go off to, like, this American guy has built from a fortress on an island that kind of served as almost a lighthousey sort of thing, but not. It's kind of weird. But he's turning it into this resort, and he's got people coming to kind of test out things and see how everything is going. And then, people die. And they've got to figure out who did what, how, where. And I really can't say more than that without giving stuff away. But it was interesting because this is one of those ones where I knew who did it, and I even kind of knew why, but I had a hard time believing it, and I was sure I was wrong because it was the only thing I could come up with. It was the only thing that made sense. And, I figured out these things, but I was like, what? I don't get it. Doesn't make sense. What's going on? And so that was kind of interesting. And when we figure it all out, even then I was kind of like, really? Oh, okay. It's like, okay. And it wasn't that the author didn't do his job well. He did. But you just want to slap people. It was more that than, what were you writing? And that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people just being stupid. And so, but it was really good. What I had a problem with, and I didn't take stars off for it, if I were only reviewing the audio, I would have pulled a star for the narration, because I have listened to all of them before this. And in all of them, flow and Lady Hardcastle have had very distinct voices. Flo is Welsh, and she is not upper class. Lady Hardcastle is obviously upper class. And so I'm used to having very distinct voices for the two of them. In this one, most of the time, Flo sounded like Lady Hardcastle. And I can't figure out why, because it's the same gal who's been doing it all along. And I thought for a while maybe they're trying to show her assimilating, or maybe it's because she's in this place and she's there as a guest instead of as a lady's maid, so she was trying to do that. But it would wobble into the old way a little bit and wobble back. It wasn't working for me, and sometimes I had a hard time knowing who was who because I'm accustomed to those very distinct voices. And so the listening of it wasn't as nice, and I might not have had the same problem if I hadn't been ill. Maybe it wouldn't have bothered me that her voice wasn't as distinct, but I kind of think it would have. Just saying. All right. One of the things when I bought Murder on the Rocks, Amazon recommended to me Sixpenny Holding by Margaret Scutt. And Sixpenny Holding was, I saw that was part of a mystery series, but I didn't have my glasses on, and I didn't see that it was number 2. So I listened to this one first. And it's supposed to be a cozy mystery in the English countryside. So I listened to it. And basically what has happened in Sixpenny Holding is that a woman her mother has died. She's spent years taking care of her. So she took her inheritance and she bought this little cottage and this out-of-the-way place that she had been to before. And they went as children or something, I don't know, but she'd been there before. She was familiar with it. But anyway, and she gets there, and then right away, she's planning on going and just being alone for the first time in a long time, where she doesn't have to wait on anyone. Not that she minded her mother. She wasn't one of those bitter people. But, she needs that relief of it. A little bit like Amelia Peabody by Elizabeth Peters, how she'd taken care of her father, and then once, her father's gone, she just ups and does something for herself. Well, this is kind of what this gal's doing, but she's going to go off into the English countryside and write. So she goes off there, she buys Sixpenny Holding is the name of the cottage. I just love that title so much. And she's just going to sit there and she's going to write and she's going to do her thing, right? Well, yeah, doesn't go well. There's a farmer next door with a stepbrother who lives with him and his wife. And so the stepbrother is this really quiet, almost recalcitrant person, but he is very helpful. And so, you've got, and they're an interesting couple. They've got their things. Nice little, nice little community there. Then you have, she gets a call almost immediately. So anyway, she comes over and she's like, your brother called. So she goes and calls the brother to find out that her cousin, who takes care of her brother's child, wife is dead, she has been killed. And the child needs somewhere to go. And the brother wants the child to come to her. Well, A, she doesn't know anything about children, but B, she just got there. This is supposed to be her time, right? But what's she going to say? So they bring the child. The child's like 4, I think. Yeah. And she doesn't know anything about children. And so she thinks. And so she has to get together with this child and try to interact with this child and do all the things with this child. And then it just goes on, and her sister's youngest child comes, this girl's like 12, I think, and this girl is really good with this little one, and they all have these little adventures together. And it's very domestic. It's 1960s England, and seriously, to me, it felt like D.E. Stevenson in the 60s. That's what the story felt like. Just all the little things that happen. At one point, there is this concern that some guy who had been in the neighborhood for years, way back when, got sent to prison and he has escaped, and maybe he's going to come here. That's mentioned, and she's worried about it for a little bit in the middle of the book, maybe, and then pretty much nothing. And it goes all the way till the very end where there's this little bitty intense moment, and then the story's over. And you kind of have a mystery, but you don't, but you do, but you don't. I would not call this a mystery. I would call that a mysterious moment in a domestic novel. I don't understand why it's considered part of this English mysteries. It doesn't make sense. I mean, from what I can tell, these English village mysteries, from what I can tell, they're not connected. They were just mysteries that took place in English villages, and so they're going to stick them in a series. But it's really not a series. They're not connected in any way, and this really isn't a mystery. It's just a story that has a little bit of a mysterious element. What can I say? But I loved it. It was great. It feels like there were a couple of small words, not throwaway. They had meaning to them. It says, I wrote in my review, there was a tiny smattering of mild expletives and an irreverent use of God's name or two. And the second book had more, which was actually the first book, which is what made these stand out. But anyway, so there's something in it. It's obviously not supposed to be Christian fiction, so whatever. But it was delightful. Sixpenny Cottage, gave it 5 stars. Without a doubt. Just, I really, really loved it. I wish there were more. As far as I can tell, there aren't. She wrote some things that were maybe medieval, but this is what I want, and I think these are the only 2. It's really sad. All right, and then the other book, the first one in that series, is Corpse Path Cottage. And this one was a mystery, and it was really good. It was, for reasons I can't explain, I only gave it 4 stars. It might be because there was a little bit more of the mild expletives in there. Neither one of these had anything near as much as there were in Booked for Murder, but there were a few mild and irreverent, more at the beginning of this one, if I recall correctly. But anyway, so in this one we have a young man. I'm gonna butcher his name, getting him wrong. There's too many people to keep track of, but he moves to, get this, God's Blessing. That's the name of the village. Isn't that awesome? He moves to God's Blessing. He buys a cottage sight unseen, pays too much money for it, and not aware that it's too much, but he just has to get out of London. He's just back from the war. He was in Malaya, and he's just like, just gotta get out of here. So he's gonna go right. And so he goes to the village. She's a common theme here, right? And so he goes to the village. He gets there, and on the way there, he's on a bus, and he's next to this very prim and proper woman, and there are a couple of ladies ahead of him that are being nosy busybodies, and he makes a random kind of ridiculous comment about, the murderers in places like this. Well, he gets to the place, and he recognizes a woman there, and she is freaking out. And it just kind of spirals from there. Eventually somebody dies, and the village all turns on him. They're convinced it's him because it was near his cottage, and these 2 young boys found the body, and all the things that could go wrong, right? And then along come the police, and oh my goodness, did I think he was the superintendent. He was some sort of inspector, some sort of detective. He wasn't in charge. There was a guy above him, and so maybe he wasn't the super. But I felt like they kept calling him that. Maybe I'm just getting it backwards. I don't know. But that guy was just certain that it was. I'm going to call him James because I think that might be his name. I think maybe not. I don't know. But he is just convinced that this James it's him, and it's not, but he looks guilty on all accounts, right? And I figured it out and didn't at the same time. So one of the things that I figured out who did it as far as who the person actually was, but not who the person actually was. And that's really all I can say, because it would be a huge spoiler. But he was so... This inspector guy was, oh my goodness, he was so good. It was a little bit like, you know how the British are, they tend to have this understatedness in their detective work. Like, I think Miss Marple meets Columbo. You know, he's the equivalent of Columbo in how he's observant and quiet and paying attention and not really blustering and in your face or anything. But with Miss Marple's subtlety and really kind of attitude, you know. And so he's investigating, and this guy is sure that he's going to be arrested at any moment. And this guy's like, if you didn't do it, then you have nothing to be concerned about, you know. And it just kind of goes on. They figure out who did it. You know, we get the whole story. There were things that I knew, things that I didn't know, that once I did know, then, you know, that confirmed what I had decided, but I still didn't know who the person I knew who did it was. And then when all of a sudden I went, oh, wow, you know, I had that moment. It was really good. This takes place in the 40s during the war. And I think it was still completely during the war or barely right after. He's out of the war, but I think the war still is going on, if I recall correctly. So anyway, it was really, really good. Again, a few more words at the beginning than the other one. But again, when I'm complaining about these words, almost nobody would mention them, because there are very few and far between. And I mean, I would say they're probably less than you would find in a Mrs. Halifax. But for what it's worth, I'm mentioning them. And then I listened to Skin and Bone, the Brand of Justice, book number 5. Yeah, 5. And okay, this was an incredible mystery. So if you love culty things, this one is it. This is the most fascinating cult novel I've read in a long time, because it is and it isn't and it isn't. It's just the whole cult aspect is totally not what you would expect. It just blows everything that you think you know out of the water. I knew who did it, but I could not figure out how they were going to show that. Who did it? That's kind of putting it, because there's like this big net, but there's somebody that you need to know who this someone is, and I knew who it was almost the moment I knew about this person. But it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, you're just going at wild stuff. But every single thing that happened confirmed it, even when it wasn't supposed to. And so that was pretty cool. It was a great story. Kenna is still herself. She's still aloof from people, but she's being drawn in because she is protective of this young girl that she met in the last book, and she's trying to protect her from all kinds of things. And so it's mellowing her in some ways, but she's still being her, and it's working really well. However, I think this is the first one that I only gave 4 stars to. The first book in the series is really jumpy while you're getting to know all the bits and pieces for the series, and some people had really problems with that. I don't think I took off star ratings for that, but maybe I should have. This one I took star ratings off because it wasn't jumpy like that, but stuff contradicted. And again, I was sick, but it happened too often for me to believe that it's all me. And then what happened the most, though, was the repetitiveness. There would be some strange repetitiveness, and I was like, why? You just told us this. Why is this here again? And I almost feel like, and I can't say this because I don't know this, but it feels like the narrator got the wrong file. Like, she got an unedited version where they hadn't pulled some of that stuff out. And I wonder if that's not possible, because again, there were a couple of things that contradicted, and I was like, wait a minute. Nuh-uh. You said this. This is like, it's not like the opposite, but it might as well be kind of thing. And so I was like, And that all happened before the midway point. I don't think it got repetitive or contradicted after the midway. Definitely not after the 2/3 mark. But there was definitely some trouble there. And then finally, this was a book that really makes me feel like a total hypocrite. I'm just putting it out there. I listened to the Charity Shop Detective Agency. And this is book 1 of a series. It takes place in, is it in Devon? It's near the sea in England, southern England, and it's south something. I don't know if the place really exists or not. But anyway, they run a charity shop. All dogs need homes or something like that. And there's a rival charity shop across the street that is something about cats. Okay. Yeah, the gals in charge of both of these shops definitely fight like dogs and cats. It's kind of ridiculous. So the dog shop has 3 main gals that are running it. You have, I'm going to call her Faith for now. Anyway, and this author, my goodness, he has given every person such a distinct personality that even if you don't know someone super well, you know it's not the last person because they're so very distinct. Minor characters, major characters, and there's even 2 that are just a hint over the top, but because of how and why, it still works, and it shouldn't. I'm just saying. It's crazy. But we have Faith. She's these 3 ladies. They're retired. Faith is I don't even know if that's her name. I should find out. All right, I'm wrong. It's Fiona. Okay, so Fiona she's just kind of got a good head on her shoulders. She's kind of the balance between the other 2 ladies, and she's in charge of the shop. Then you have who Fiona calls Partial Sue. And Partial Sue, she calls, and it's that way through the whole time. Every single time it's Sue, it's like Partial Sue. I have a character that I call Aunt, and then I put in parentheses Gimme, and then Mercy. And anytime they're talking about it, it's always Aunt Gimme Mercy. And that's kind of how he does with this Partial Sue. Partial Sue is called this because she's constantly saying, well, I'm partial to a bit of tea before, like get my day going, or I'm partial to a nice, summer hat, or I'm partial to, so it's always that, right? And she used to be an accountant, and she is very much I don't want to say a miser, but if she's incredibly frugal, and if she didn't like the occasional creature comfort, she would go into miserly. She is very careful with her pennies. And so you have her. Then you have Daisy. Daisy is a sweetheart. She is pretty tech savvy, but she comes off as really ditzy. So if these were the Golden Girls, you would definitely have Fiona would be Blanche, no doubt. Daisy would definitely be Rose, Betty White, absolutely. And I would say that Sue is much more like the grandma, but leaning toward the frugal side rather than just the sarcastic side. She does tend to be a bit sharp, but not as much. And I can't remember Blanche's mother's name. Anyway, it's been a few decades. So, but anyway, that is them. And seriously, the gal across the street, what's that other woman's name? You have Rose, you have Blanche. Whatever the southern woman's name is, that's Sophie across the street with the cat place, I'm telling you. But anyway, at the beginning of the day, one day, Fiona's heading into the shop, and she sees Sophie from across the street carry a box of donations that had been left on her step across the street and dumped in front of their place. People are not supposed to dump boxes, but they do. And she's ticked off. Fiona is ticked off that this has gotten, dumped on her spot. She confronts Sophie. Sophie's like not having it. So she goes in and she's flipping through this stuff to see if, they can even use any of it. And she comes across a bloodied knife. Yeah. And it just sets off this series of, they're calling it the domino killer, where these people are found stabbed in the back with a domino in their hand. The domino numbers do come into it, but on the back of these dominoes, another name is kind of scratched into it, and that's who's dying next, and they've got to try to figure it out. And then one time, it's got Fiona's name. Oops. It was one of those things where I want to say I figured it out, because I figured out kind of the whys and the wherefores and stuff, but I didn't figure out the who. I had the who wrong. I had the whys and the hows and stuff figured out, but I was putting it with the wrong who. And that was really cool. It was really fun. I'm listening to the next one. The next one is the Beach Hut Murders. I've just gotten started. I don't think I'm, let's see how far I am. I'm on chapter 17 out of, don't get excited, 17 isn't very many chapters, because there are 80 chapters. So I'm on chapter 17, almost to 18 out of 80. So I'm not very far into it at all, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm reading Rosabelle Shaw. I have gotten to the point where Rosabelle is about to be born, so I'm thinking I'm maybe 20% into that book. D.E. Stevenson. It is very different from her other books, but I'm seeing, it's kind of cool because I'm reading this book and I'm seeing that this is who and what she's going to be writing. She just doesn't know it yet. And it's kind of cool because you're like, oh, wow. So enjoying that. I have not gotten any more done on the Warsaw Sisters because they were in here. So I'm going to be reading The Life She Forgot and a few books on my Kindle Unlimited because, I'm not going to be home. And so I will be reading a lot on Tuesday while I'm on the plane, but I just don't know what I'm going to be doing. Stop. Wanted to interject here. So I woke up yesterday morning to, Sunday morning, to Melissa Wardwell having a video explaining that her husband had a motorcycle accident that sounds very much like what Kevin did back in December 2023. His is worse. Jonathan's is much worse. He has multiple broken bones. So did Kevin, but his sound worse to me. He has the brain bleeds that Kevin had, but they put him in a medically induced coma. So yeah. Things aren't good for them, so please pray for them. Pray that she is far away, reasonably speaking. He's at a hospital quite a ways south of her, I think it is, and is he in Detroit? He might be over in Detroit. Anyway, he's at a hospital quite a ways away, and they just don't have the funds for her to stay there all the time. So she's home, and her husband is there, and, now there's no income. So please pray for provision and for healing and all the things. We would so appreciate it. All right. back to the video. So that's what I've been reading. What you've been reading. Tell me you haven't been sick, and whatever you do, don't get this because it's terrible. I'm literally feeling like I'm going to pass out. So I'm going to say a quick goodbye. And I hope I will see you on Friday with stuff from the retreat. If the authors let me, I will get a few little snippets for you guys, and it'll be fun. So if not, I'll see you there with something, even if it's just journal making. You have a good one, and